Ceasefires feel like endings. The bombs stop falling, markets go up, everyone breathes out with relief, and the news moves on to other things. That feeling is wrong. Today, I am going to show you exactly why it is wrong. What happened on April 7th, 2026 needs a much closer look than it is getting. Trump posted on True Social. He did not do it at a press conference. He did not do it in a national speech. He posted that the United States and Iran had agreed to a 2-week truce. Just hours before that post, he had threatened to destroy every bridge and every power plant in Iran if they did not reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Markets jumped up on the news. Oil prices fell more than 13% in one single day. News anchors smiled. Commentators cheered. Then Iran gave its official answer and accepted the deal. And here is where you need to slow down and really read what they said. Iran's Supreme National Security Council put it like this, and these are their exact words. It is emphasized that this does not mean the end of the war. Our hands remain on the trigger, and if the enemy makes even the smallest mistake, it will be met with full force. That is not the language of surrender. That is not even the language of a real ceasefire. A country that has truly lost and accepted defeat does not put out statements about keeping their hands on the trigger. Trump called it a total and complete victory. Iran called it a pause while their weapons stayed loaded. One of those two descriptions has to be wrong. To understand which one is wrong, we need to go all the way back to June of last year. Less than 12 months ago, in June 2025, Israel started what became known as the 12-Day War. More than 200 Israeli fighter jets struck over 100 targets in a single morning. They hit nuclear facilities, military bases, and command centers. All of this happened before most Iranians had even finished eating breakfast. An operation codenamed Red Wedding killed 30 Iranian generals within minutes. It also killed 9 nuclear scientists. The United States joined the fighting on June 22nd. They sent strikes into Natanz and Isfahan, the most protected places in Iran's nuclear program. 12 days after it all began, a ceasefire came on June 24th. It was arranged by the United States and Qatar. Netanyahu called it a historic victory that would last for generations. The ceasefire held, the world moved on. And this is where the story becomes more complicated. Because after June 2025, something unexpected began to happen. Iran started to negotiate. Indirect talks started again. Conversations about a nuclear deal gained real speed. By late February 2026, mediators from Oman were telling people that a peace agreement was close. They said Iran had agreed to stop saving up enriched uranium beyond the lowest level. Iran also agreed to accept full checks by the IAEA. Diplomacy seemed to be working. On February 28, 2026, while those talks were still going on, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury. The first strike did not hit a nuclear site. It hit Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei himself. He was killed along with his daughter, his son-in-law, and his grandchildren. At the same time, the strikes took out 40 senior Iranian commanders and officials. That included the defense minister, the IRGC chief, the naval commander, and the intelligence minister. All of this happened in one morning. Analysts called it the worst removal of a government's top leaders in Iran's modern history. The Omani mediators later said that a peace deal had been very close just before the strikes. Ali Vaez from the International Crisis Group described Khamenei as the most practical decision-maker in the Iranian system. He added that killing him could close the door on nuclear diplomacy and give more power to harder and less predictable leaders. 8 days after his death, the Assembly of Experts named his son Mojtaba Khamenei, who is 56 years old, as Iran's new supreme leader. The IRGC promised in their own words full obedience and self-sacrifice to him. They vowed to fight until Iran won victory. Trump said publicly that Mojtaba was unacceptable. He told ABC News directly that Mojtaba would have to get approval from the United States. If he did not get that approval, he would not last long. The Iranians chose him anyway. Now let us talk about what 40 days of this war actually produced. Most of the news coverage has moved so fast that the full picture has not settled yet. When Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz on March 4th, that narrow waterway was only 21 miles wide at its tightest point. Every day, it carried about 20% of the world's seaborne crude oil. Brent crude oil went above $100 a barrel for the first time in 4 years. It kept climbing and reached a high of $126. Before the war, it had been around $70. The International Energy Agency called it the greatest global energy security challenge in history. They said the disruption was bigger than anything seen since the 1970s energy crisis. By March 31st, gas prices in the United States had reached $4 a gallon. That was a 30% increase, caused almost completely by the closure. Gulf states that bring in 80% of their food through the strait faced what officials called a grocery supply emergency. In some places, consumer prices jumped between 40 and 120%. Kuwait and Qatar make 99% of their drinking water from desalination plants. They face the chance of a real humanitarian water crisis. The human cost inside Iran reached at least 1,237 civilians dead in the first month. 452 of them were women and children. More than 24,000 people were hurt. 3.2 million Iranians had to leave their homes. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, the death toll in Lebanon from the fighting with Hezbollah went past 1,400. 7 American soldiers died in the fighting. 8 more were seriously wounded. Pentagon costs reached $18 billion by March 19th. The Defense Department asked for another $200 billion. Qatar's Ras Laffan complex produces about 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. It took enough damage to cut its exportability by 17%. Experts at Rystad Energy estimated that rebuilding the region's energy infrastructure could cost more than $25 billion. One more detail needs attention. A Financial Times investigation found that $580 million in bets on falling oil prices were placed in the market just 15 minutes before Trump announced a pause in strikes on March 23rd. 15 minutes. That discovery led to formal calls for an insider trading investigation. No public answer has come yet. Now back to the ceasefire and to what it really does and does not fix. Oil at $94 a barrel after the announcement sounds like good news, but remember, it was $70 before the war started. Traders who use future contracts to set prices for the next several months are not expecting a return to pre-war levels this year. The market is telling you that it believes the ceasefire is real, but does not believe the problem is solved. Markets are often right about things like this. As of April 8th, tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz had not really come back. Iran was still checking which ships could pass at about the same speed as during the fighting. Maersk, one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, put out a statement. It said the ceasefire may open some chances for ships to move through, but it does not yet give full safety at sea. When Maersk speaks in careful words like that, the whole global supply chain pays attention. The difference between what each side wants from final talks is very large. Iran's 10-point proposal, the paper that Trump called a workable basis for talks, demands that Washington accept Iran's uranium enrichment program and remove all sanctions. Israel's position demands that Iran give up all its stored enriched uranium. Those two demands do not meet at any point. They are not even close to meeting. And then there is the problem with Lebanon that no one has solved. Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, who helped arrange this deal, said publicly that the ceasefire covered every front, including Lebanon. Netanyahu said on the same day that it does not cover Lebanon. Israeli strikes in Lebanon kept going on the morning of April 8th, hours after the ceasefire was supposed to start. Economist Justin Wolfers said it clearly. The economy does not just jump back to normal. A strategist from TD Bank wrote that the market rise shows only a drop in big risks, not a real improvement in the basic situation. Prabha Thakur from the Economist Intelligence Unit described what the world is seeing as a pause in the fighting, not any kind of lasting fix. She called the arrangement very fragile. That view came out on the same morning the markets were celebrating. When you put all of this together, the real shape of the situation becomes clear. The United States and Israel attacked Iran while Iranian diplomats were still sitting at the negotiating table. They killed the one Iranian leader that most analysts thought could actually make and keep a deal. His replacement, chosen by Iran's own groups, has been publicly called unacceptable by the American president. The IRGC has promised total war. Iran closed the world's most important energy waterway for 5 weeks. This created a global supply shock that economists are already warning will affect inflation, economic growth, and company earnings in the months ahead. A ceasefire came under pressure from a deadline. Iran's own acceptance statement clearly said the war continues. 3 huge problems remain completely unsolved. The nuclear question has not been touched. The IAEA still does not have access to the damaged sites. Neither side has agreed on what future checks would even look like. Iran's new leadership stays, by America's own words, unacceptable to Washington. This makes any lasting agreement very hard to explain to people at home on both sides. Analysts have also pointed out the real chance that Iran may make some lasting control over shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, a normal part of its system. That kind of limit on global energy did not exist before February 28th. 2 weeks. That is the window we have. Delegations will meet in Islamabad on Friday, April 10th. Watch those talks carefully. Watch whether tanker traffic really returns to normal or stays at the slow level it has been at. Watch what happens in Lebanon, where Israeli strikes continued even after the ceasefire was announced. Watch what Mojtaba Khamenei, Iran's new supreme leader, says in public in the days ahead. The guns are quiet for now. But Iran told the world in writing in their official government statement that the war has not ended and their hands are still on the trigger. The very least anyone watching this can do is believe what they said.